Okay guys, so this is going to be another little assignment that I'm going to set up for you with a couple videos, okay? And we're going to talk about something called the discriminant, which should sound familiar. We actually have used it a lot. We haven't talked about it in this way in detail though. So here we go, the discriminant. Now, I assigned this to you. Discriminant review, I'm pretty sure I did. But anyways, you can go ahead and just search that if you want to find it. I recommend you do the discriminant review because in there it explains to you very nicely. Here, of course, is a quadratic formula. This is a standard form for a given quadratic. And it explains to you, hey, the discriminant. Let me see if I have a good example here. Okay, the discriminant part, I didn't take a picture of it, no big deal, is this right here, guys. The discriminant part, he does explain it right here. It's the part underneath your square root. The b squared minus 4ac part. Now, before I actually explain the next screen, let's use some common sense. If we did this, if we did the math, we plugged in our A, B, and C's, right? There's only three things that can really happen. The ones I've been doing with you, basically almost every time, we end up with a nice positive number. It may be a number like 20, and of course the square root of 20 we'd have to simplify or make into a decimal, but it'll be a nice positive number. What that means is we will have, of course, two answers then, two solutions, right? However, do you agree that if I did this, very rarely, but every once in a while when we did it, we ended up getting a 0. And if it's 0, if this is 0, then we're plussing or minusing a 0. And whenever you plus or minus a 0, you still have the same number, right? So when you get a 0 in the discriminant, you know you're only going to have one answer. Okay, and finally, the other choice, again, very rarely happened with us, but we did a few. When we did the b squared minus 4ac, we ended up with a negative number. So let's say we end up with the square root of negative 12, for instance. Well, this one has 0 real answers. It does have 2 imaginary or complex answers, right? And that's what Mr. Kahn explains here. If you end up with a positive number, you're going to have 2 real answers. If you end up with a 0 in the discriminant, you're going to have only one real repeating answer. If you end up with a negative, of course, that means you have a square root of something negative. Then you have no real solutions. You have actually 2 imaginary or complex solutions. And then what's cool about this, guys, is you can practice it with him. He gives you a problem. He actually walks you through an example here, for example. Now, what I want to point out is when you look at this graph, do you notice that we have one answer there and one answer there, right? Remember, whenever it crosses the x-axis, those are answers. Those are our solutions. Those are what we call our roots or our zeros or our x-intercepts. And this graph would give us, if we did the discriminant here, 2 real answers. Okay? They may be decimals, they may not be integers, but they'll be real answers. Okay? And let's see what else I have for you. Now, what I want you to do, of course, is go into this article, as he calls it. Make good notes, guys, on it. Do the practice problems. And get some feedback to make sure you're doing it correctly. Okay? For example, if you did this one here. Now, I didn't work it out, but you're going to do, in other words, the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c and see how it works out. Matter of fact, let's just talk about it right now. So guys, we're just looking at the discriminant here. That's what they're asking for, right? And if you do discriminant, you actually get the square root of 0, guys. What's the square root of 0? 0. And whenever you get a 0, how many distinct real number zeros will you have? You will have one repeating answer. Okay? Bottom line, you'll have one answer whenever you get a 0. Now, there should be at least a couple practice problems you could do with Mr. Khan. And this is a nice little set of notes that you can take and study with, guys. Reviewing what we call the discriminant. Okay? Now I'm going to do a follow-up video using the discriminant. I'll see you then.